101,606,400. That's every unique lineup permutation for my 23-man squad. I needed just 48 in a 53-game season, so let's talk about squad rotation, why I changed my starting lineup so frequently, and how that gives me a competitive edge. This is Moneyballers, a mini-series where I use performance data to guide tactics and transfers. We're at Werder Bremen measuring hard work, using distance covered, high-intensity sprints and pressures attempted. In our first season we cracked the top 3, then came the overhaul. 16 players out, just 8 in, and we took the fight right down to the last day, finishing as runners-up. It's now season 3, and hopefully this will be the first time Werder secure a title since 2004. But first, I've got some questions to answer. P-Bunker asked why I use instant result instead of holidaying, a question I often get asked, whilst Elias NJ23 asked about preventing fatigue, and the two are kinda related. It's been a while since I started this series back in FM24, and a lot of new people have come along for the ride, so it's probably worth revisiting why I use instant result. It's this guy's fault, Jacob Kaminski. I signed him as a backup for Sevilla, and the AI didn't use him when I holidayed the game. But he was a backup, so I didn't want to put him in the starting lineup and force the game to pick him every time. It's the expected conflict from this data-led approach. By signing players undervalued by the market, the game is likely to consider them as worse players. Let's take Anton Bauer for example. Signed last season from Paderborn for $500,000. He was sensational, laying on 12 assists. But if I left selection up to the AI, Friedel would have been used as the starting left back, or I forced the game to select Bauer and he never gets rested. Neither of those are desired outcomes, so this approach is born out of necessity. I'd love to play every game properly, but then there'd only be one video per month. Now that answers why I use instant result, but not how I manage squad rotation. For that, let's crack on with season 3. I've exported those aforementioned metrics, distance covered, high intensity sprints, and pressures attempted, so we can see how our players are performing compared to the rest of the league. I'm not assessing keepers at the moment, but I'm happy with what we've got. Kolka has now retired though. Centre-backs are doing a great job in covering ground. Friedel and Chase have spent some time at fullback, so that skews their numbers a little. Our fullbacks were phenomenal. They did the hard work and combined for 29 assists. Our midfielders, less so. This was where we left last episode. I made some tactical changes in the hope of improving midfielder output, and it got worse. But as a team, we covered the most distance and performed the most high-intensity sprints. My conclusion, as the midfield output is poor across everyone, is that I'm not giving them the platform to perform. Further tactical tweaks are required, and we'll get to that in a little bit. It essentially means these guys have a mulligan. I'm not going to critique them for their perceived lack of graft, which is great for Gullikson, who can ride the adulation that comes from his 39 goal contributions. Moreover, we can see that slack is picked up by the strikers, all in the 80th percentile or above for every metric. I'm happy, but not all of them are. Samuel Mbangula wants to go out on loan, so instead I've sold him to Leeds for €20 million. We also loaned out youngster Wesley Adar for more consistent game time. A much calmer summer this time around. Now I mentioned tactical tweaks, so let's get to it. Last season we pushed our advanced playmaker into attacking midfield and gave him a free role. We swapped our pressing central midfielders for tracking attacking midfielders and our outlet attacking midfielder for an outlet central forward, all pressing more often. Essentially, I'm just going to undo the out of possession changes. There aren't many individual instructions. The deep line forward moves into channels. The left wide central midfielder makes more forward runs. The right wide central midfielder takes more risks. I'm going to change that. Risk off, dribble more on. Out of possession, the pressing central midfielders already press more often, but I've added that instruction to the 3 attacking midfielders. For team instructions, in possession, we play at a higher tempo, counter-attack, much wider, play through the press, short goal kicks, pass into space, discourage long shooting and distribute quickly. I want variety. I want us to build up from deep and force the opposition to chase the ball, but I also want intensity. So I've increased the tempo to much higher. Essentially, I want us to give away the ball more often. I'm happy with our attacking output, but I'm willing to make the game a little more transitional and force our midfielders to run around more. Our out of possession instructions remain unchanged, mainly because we can't increase the intensity anymore. With that in mind, let's strengthen the squad. Once again, I've analysed the average performance by position group for players in the Bundesliga. I'll use this as the guide, finding players who are above average in the 3 metrics and above the 80th percentile in at least one. To start, I want one more fullback. Belay created the most, Okoroji covered the most distance. Puchas is arguably the best, but Belay is the cheapest, 300k and 12.75 grand per week. I want to add more pressure from midfield. Abubakar Barry does that incredibly well. Chukwuani adds final third impact. Matinho doesn't stop sprinting. Pressure is the greater priority, so Barry is the choice. A free transfer on just 8.5k per week. Up front I need a replacement for Mbangula. Brynhildsen was impressive in limited minutes, but views himself as a starter. Nimiec provides frontline pressure and assists. Timo Werner brings Bundesliga experience. Nimiec it is, 600k and 4.5 grand per week. I also want a third choice goalkeeper. Ideally experienced, ideally homegrown at Werder. I have a short list of one, so welcome Leo Wankoff, 135k and 5.5 grand per week. Nope, no jokes here. That's 4 players in for just 1.1 million. In fact, all 4 combined are earning just 3 grand more than Mbangula was alone. Now last episode, I established that our wage budget should be around 1 million euros per week, an average of 40k per player. We're well under that, so unsurprisingly players want pay rises. Perhaps more surprisingly, I've obliged. Bauerler now earns 23.5 grand, as does Patrice Kovic. Rosenboom's up to 35k, Cars to 44k, with Top just edging him out. Gulluckson becomes our joint top earner at 60 grand per week. By the end of the season, our wage budget was up to 755k, still well underneath our budget. That gives us a squad planner that looks something like this. By promoting Ethan Kohler from the second team, we have 2 players in each position. Now that makes it look like we have a first 11 and backups, but that's not really a true reflection. There's a handful of key players, Backhouse, Friedel, Stay and Top are my core, all except Stay are homegrown at club, but I'm comfortable with every player being a starter. By using performance data to sign players, that has 2 benefits. Firstly, I'm confident they can perform, and secondly, I'm signing players who aren't necessarily fashionable. That means their playing time expectations are usually on the low side, at least initially. In fact, if I skip forward to the end of the season, we can see there isn't a single player unhappy with their playing time. We can also see that all but 4 players, 2 of them goalkeepers, started double-figure games. A key part of that is flexibility. A more honest squad planner might be like this, and even then ordering is kind of inconsequential. Let's focus on the midfield unit here. My perceived starting lineup might be Linnen, Alvaro, Stay and Gulluckson. Maybe Linnen is unavailable and I drop Alvaro back, bring in Lubach. Maybe Stay's unavailable and I swing Lubach over and bring in Barry. Maybe Lubach plays further forwards, Barry and Alvaro shift and Linnen comes back in. I'm comfortable with any of those permutations. Sure, I might go into the season with a starting lineup in mind. By the end of the season that might have changed, but I construct the squad so I don't fear rotation. Here's that squad planner again, and these are all the positions I'm happy for the players to start. God, it looks so chaotic. That's the why. What about how? You might expect me to say it comes down to some complicated kind of planning. It doesn't. I do take a quick look at the fixture schedule at the start of the season to identify those possible key moments, like this run with Frankfurt, Bayern and Dortmund, but there's a big international break in the middle. That pattern repeats in February, and if we're lucky enough to progress in the Champions League, that could be a key run. But why would I worry about that now when I have no way of predicting the impact of injuries or form? Instead, it's just about actively making changes from the start. I want to give players ample opportunity to impress. I want to establish who I think my best players are, and I don't want to burn players out early in the season. Let's take our first 8 games, excluding the Domestic Cup. This was our starting lineup against Hertha, a 1-0 win. 4 changes for Hoffenheim, a 3-1 win. Another 4 changes for a 2-1 win over Mönchengladbach, and 5 changes for a 3-1 win at St. Pauli. We had a kind opening in the Champions League, away against AIK, then home against München. That allowed me to be more aggressive in rotation. So 8 changes for a 4-0 win, then 7 for a league draw against Eintracht Frankfurt, 6 changes for München, a 6-1 win, and 5 before an away draw against Bayern Munich. If we ignore the Champions League games, it was just 3 changes between Frankfurt and Bayern. So by the end of September, every outfield player except Ethan Kohler started at least 2 games. And by the end of the season, we have 19 players who played at least 1,000 minutes. Obviously, that's not all down to rotation. Injuries play their part in such an intense system. Skelly Alvaro, Henry Chase, Martin Kars, Abubakar Barry, Patrice Kovic, Nicholas Stark and Jona Niemiec all had multiple minor niggles throughout the season. Sanusi Bar and Marco Friedel had some slightly longer layoffs, whilst Marvin Pieringer sprained his knee ligaments at the same time Kiki Top was out with a dislocated shoulder. I've tracked this all in a spreadsheet. I mean, of course I have. Over 53 games, I used 48 unique lineups. Each highlighted cell here indicates when I made a change in that position from the previous game. The same lineup didn't play 2 games in a row, and on average, I made 6 changes for each game. Excluding the goalkeeper, Friedel had the longest starting streak, 8 consecutive games. Personally, I think this visualization is the most helpful, as you can see that despite a lot of changes between games, there are still clear starters, and the rotation doesn't mean your key players are constantly being benched. The end of October was probably when we were most stretched. Even then, only 7 players were showing even the lightest signs of fatigue. Of course, this only really matters if we get results. Let's see how we got on. You already know we were unbeaten in our first 8 games, but that excluded the Super Cup, which we lost 3-2 to Dortmund, a result we avenged in early October with a 1-0 win in the league. A 3-1 win over Mainz extended our winning streak. Against Barcelona, it was not a great start. Rafinha had acres of space in the second phase of a corner, and Yamal tapped in the scramble. We responded pretty much immediately. Rosenboom found Barry, who fed Kars. He turned Buongiorno in the box before lashing past Joan Garcia. Shortly after, Gullikson ran the channel, held it up well before finding the late run of Jens Stay to sweep home. Then it's set piece time. Gullikson the taker, 6'8" Skelly Alvaro the target. It can't get better than this. Well, actually, it can. Rosenboom fed Kars to make it 4-1. We are unstoppable. 2-0 against Leverkusen, 3-2 against Heidenheim in the Cup and 4-0 away against Paderborn. A 1-1 draw away against Spurs, a 1-1 draw against Wolfsburg, a 1-1 draw against Kaiserslautern. We'll consider that a dip in form. A short-lived one. 4-0 against RB Salzburg, the same against Freiburg, and a narrow 1-0 win in the Cup. Stuttgart have been a thorn in our side so far, but maybe this is the year that changes. Alvaro drilling low to open the scoring. Set-piece shenanigans are always welcome. Kars finds Leinen, who takes it on the turn. Another second phase of a corner, another chance. Gullikson the beneficiary as we make it 3-0. But Stuttgart are our bogey team for a reason. Some beautiful interplay and the comeback is on. Moments later, Atachan plays a delicious ball over the top, and El Kanous can only hit the post. We survive. Man United can't stop us, nor can Augsburg or Leipzig. By the winter break we were top, unbeaten in the league, yet only a 5-point buffer. The new year saw business as usual, 3-2 against Union Berlin, 4-0 against Hoffenheim. Inter would inflict our first defeat since the Super Cup. How do we respond after a defeat? Not well. We watch idly as Fabian Rees skips into the box to fire Hertha ahead. He continued to cause trouble down our right, teeing up Martin Dardé, who can't get it on target. Can Gulluckson get us back into it? He lines up the free kick which grazes the roof of the net. Sometimes there is only one solution, and that's to fall over spectacularly. Nimiec wins the penalty, Kiki Top with the chance to equalise. He obliges. An immediate response against PSV, followed by a comfortable win over Mönchengladbach, saw us end January as we started. 5 points between us and Bayern Munich. February was crunch time, that run against the rest of the top four, Frankfurt, Bayern and Dortmund. Our Champions League performance had given us a bye to the round of 16, meaning no midweek games until March. We get the job done in the DFB Pokal, obliterated St. Pauli 4 days later. The first of 3 tough games, and Frankfurt strike first. Noah Brown with a delightful volley. Our response comes from a set piece. What a surprise. Kars holds it up inside the box, Gulluckson sweeps home. But Frankfurt have a knack for picking up points against us. Ritsu Doan dances in the box before feeding Burkhardt for the winner. Bayern next, a tie which is almost always all set pieces. And this time Henry Chase was in the right place. We can score from open play, in fact sometimes we do, like Lubak, in injury time to double our lead. Borussia Dortmund await, and an early Gustavo Sarr foray ends with a powerful Max Bayer header. Our response didn't come until the second half. Kiki Top runs the channel, finds Lubak, whose shot is deflected in by Svensson. In the dying moments, drama. Patrice Kovic auditions for the Olympic diving team. Jens stay to settle it. Rather, Kerbal to be the hero. There is still time for one last corner, but the seconds are ticking away. We just need to keep them hemmed in, maybe get a lucky bounce, maybe find Martin Kars 6 yards out in the 96th minute. Bayern lost at home against Hoffenheim, and this is surely the title wrapped up. 11 points between us with 10 games remaining. Our tails were up. 5-2 in Bruges allowed us to ring the changes for the second leg, where we did just enough. That sandwiched a 4-1 victory over Mainz. We continued to have the better of Leverkusen, ran rampant over Paderborn, but required a 95th minute winner at Wolfsburg. We've been pretty good at home against English clubs, but Man City seemed not to get the memo. Bernardo Silva opened the scoring, before Savinho crossed deep for Trincão to delightfully volley home first time. A short corner routine saw the two scorers combine. Silva drives into the box, Trincão sweeps home the third. 3 days later, Kaiserslautern visit. A win secures the title, but Rosenboom scores in the wrong net. An auspicious start. We need to move the ball quicker, crisper, a little bit more like that. Into the second half, and Kiki Top feeds Martin Kars, and there was never any doubt. Our first title since 2004, sealed with 5 league games remaining. We'd go on to win them all without conceding a single goal, eventually finishing with a 21-point buffer. Absolute domination. It's ridiculous, and we're not done yet. No, we didn't stage a surprise comeback at the Etihad. Our Champions League campaign ends with a 6-1 aggregate defeat, but we did reach the DFB Pokal final, ready to defend our title against Bayern Munich. It is no surprise the first chance came from a corner. Upamecano's powerful header cleared off the line by Marco Friedl, through Backhouse's arm. Another set piece saw Luis Diaz recover the second ball, exchange passes with Kimmich, then graze the outside of the post. Early into the second half, Musiala got in behind. He drills it across the box. Diaz gives Bayern the lead. Our response was immediate. Bauerler has time and space on the left, swings in an absolute peach for Kars to head home. In search of a winner, and Gulluckson's quick feet leaves Tar for dead. He dinks it in for Kars, and the turnaround is not complete. The tightest of offsides. Into the 90th minute, and Rosenboom pushes the ball into the channel for Pieringer, before getting the return pass. A cheeky backheel. Pieringer tackled, Lubac arrives at just the right time and oh my, we've defended our DFB Pokal title. The double is ours. What an incredible season. And that final speaks to the competitive edge I alluded to earlier. Here is our squad, every starter at peak match sharpness, with a bench full of players ready to step in. The same can't be said for Bayern Munich, not just in terms of sharpness, but also fatigue. Now I can't conclude that's why we scored a last-minute winner, but it certainly puts us in a strong position. Let's head back to the squad and take a look at some of the numbers. We can once again see that our fullbacks and strikers are leading the way in physical output, above 13 kilometers distance covered and in the mid to high 20s for sprints. I'm most encouraged, however, to see a couple of our midfielders, Stay and Lubac, performing more than 15 sprints per 90. That's definitely an improvement. And that's definitely manifested in the team output. We completed 750 more sprints than the next best team, and whilst the margin is far narrower, we still have the lowest Opta. Perhaps surprisingly, despite the more rushed approach, our possession has increased. This is where we need to look next. I want to incorporate possession adjusted joules. I want to know how aggressive we are at getting in the opposition's face, and I want to combine it into a single metric. That's for next episode, where we'll look to retain our league title, and who knows, maybe challenge for the Champions League. See you then. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a like or maybe even subscribing. Your support is greatly appreciated. And if you want a little more, you can become a YouTube member or Patreon, which includes director's cut versions of videos. Links in the description below.